She was supposed to be my stepmom. Confident, calm, the kind of woman who never loses control. But that night, when she looked at me and said, "Stop pretending you're innocent," something shifted. I wasn't sure if she was angry or afraid of what we both felt. And I swear, from that moment, nothing in that house felt the same again. My stepmom said, "Stop pretending you're innocent," then pressed me against her the first time she said that. Her voice wasn't angry. It was quiet, too quiet, like she was testing something in me. I had just come back from college for the weekend. My dad wasn't home. He'd gone out of town for a few days, leaving me to handle a few things around the house. Leaky faucet, broken shelf, small stuff. She'd called me into the kitchen while wiping her hands on a towel, the faint scent of lemon cleaner still hanging in the air. That's when it started, the tension that didn't belong in words. She leaned against the counter, the afternoon sun slicing through the blinds and painting lines across her face. There was something about her stillness, how she always looked composed, like even silence obeyed her. Her hair was tied up, but a few strands had escaped, falling loose against her cheek. "Stop pretending you're innocent," she said softly, almost like she was amused. I froze. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer, just watched me with that steady, unreadable calm, the kind that makes you feel seen in a way you don't want to be. Then she laughed, a low, brief sound. "You still overthink everything." And just like that, she turned back to the sink, like the moment had never happened. I tried to shake it off, but the air felt heavier after that. I fixed the faucet, ran the water, tightened the screws. She moved around me quietly, her perfume faint, like coffee and something floral I couldn't name. Every time she walked past, my focus broke. She offered me a drink. "You still take it black, right?" "Yeah," I said, surprised she remembered. "I pay attention," she replied. Those 3 words shouldn't have meant anything, but they did. We talked about normal things after that, her job at the art gallery my last semester, how the house still smelled like my dad's cologne even when he wasn't around. She asked if I'd been seeing anyone. I shrugged. "Not really." A faint smile tugged at her lips. "You were always picky." She said it with warmth, not judgment. But there was something else underneath, something I couldn't place. For a while, we both fell silent. The clock ticked too loudly. The light shifted across the floor. She reached for a cup on the top shelf, and I stepped forward instinctively to help. Our hands brushed, just for a second, and she paused. Neither of us moved. Her fingers stayed there, hovering near mine. A single breath filled the space between us, too close, too aware. Then she stepped back. "Thanks," she murmured. Her tone was casual, but her eyes weren't. I finished fixing what I came for, but I lingered in the doorway before leaving. She was standing by the window, staring outside, her reflection faintly ghosted in the glass. "Need anything else?" I asked. She turned slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, that's enough." Something in the way she said enough made it sound like she didn't believe it. That night, lying in my old room, the house too quiet, I couldn't stop hearing her voice. Not the words themselves, but the way she said them. "Stop pretending you're innocent." I didn't even know what she meant, but somehow, I couldn't stop replaying it. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head, like I missed something or maybe wanted something. The next morning, she asked if I could drive her into town. Her car needed a new battery, and I was already heading that way. It sounded simple enough. It always starts that way, small favors that feel harmless until they don't. She sat beside me, sunglasses on, the radio low. We didn't talk much. The air between us carried what last night left behind. That half-spoken thing neither of us had the courage to name. Every so often, she'd hum along to a song, tapping her fingers against her knee. I found myself watching those small movements more than the road. At the repair shop, I told the mechanic what she needed and waited outside while she made a call. When she came back, her tone was different. Softer, a little tired. "Long day?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Long year." That caught me off guard. I wanted to ask more, but the way she looked away told me not to. Instead, I just nodded, pretending to understand. We stopped for coffee afterward. The kind of place with cracked leather seats and sunlight catching the dust in the air. She ordered tea. I asked if she still took it with honey. She blinked, surprised. You remember? I pay attention, I said. Her words from yesterday returned without meaning to. For a moment, she just looked at me, not smiling, not frowning, just searching. Then she shook her head, quietly amused. You shouldn't. Shouldn't what? Pay attention. It makes things complicated. Her voice trembled slightly on complicated. While she stirred her tea, I noticed how tired her hands looked. There were faint veins beneath her skin, tiny paint stains near her nails from the gallery. Hands that looked like they'd built and broken things. I wanted to ask what those things were, but I didn't. Instead, I told her about school, the projects, the late nights, the feeling of not really belonging anywhere. She listened, chin resting on her palm, eyes half-focused, as if she was somewhere else entirely. When I finished, she said quietly, "You sound lonely." The words landed heavier than I expected. "Maybe," I said. She smiled, small and real this time. "That doesn't surprise me." There was warmth in the way she said it. Not pity, just recognition. Like she knew exactly what that kind of loneliness felt like. Outside, clouds began to roll in. She pulled her cardigan tighter, and for a second, her arm brushed mine. Neither of us moved away. We just stood there, watching the light dim over the parking lot. When I offered to drive her home, she hesitated, as if saying yes meant something more than a ride. But she nodded anyway. On the way back, the rain started, soft at first. She reached to turn up the wipers, our hands almost meeting again. Then she stopped halfway, letting me do it instead. That pause, barely a second, carried more weight than anything we'd said all day. When I parked in front of the house, she stayed quiet. I thought she might thank me or make a joke, but she didn't. She just looked at me, eyes unreadable behind the gray reflection of the rain on the windshield. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't, and that silence felt louder than words. The rain didn't stop that night. It kept coming down in sheets, steady and unending, turning the street into a blur of reflected light. I was still awake when my phone buzzed. Her, "Power's out here. You still up?" Took me a second to type back. Me, "Yeah. You okay?" Her, "Fine. Just dark. Can't find the candles." I didn't even think before replying. Me, "I'll come over." She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. The house was half lit by lightning when I got there. She'd found one candle, its small flame flickering on the kitchen counter. Her hair was down this time, slightly damp, like she'd run her hands through it too many times. "You shouldn't have come," she said. "I know." "Then why did you?" I shrugged. "Couldn't sleep." A pause. The kind that says more than words. She sighed softly. "You never could." I helped her find the rest of the candles, drawers, shelves, forgotten boxes. Each one we lit pushed the shadows back just a little, but not enough. The whole house seemed to breathe differently in the dark. At one point, she reached across me to grab a match, her arm brushing mine. It wasn't deliberate, but she didn't move away. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. The smell of rain and candle wax mixed in the air. She stood close enough that I could see the faint lines around her mouth, the tiny tremor in her fingers. "You're shaking," I said quietly. "It's cold," she replied. It wasn't. We ended up sitting on the couch, the room glowing amber. She told me a story about when she first met my dad, how he used to drive too fast, laugh too loud, and never notice the little things. "I liked that about him," she said. "It made him predictable." Her voice faltered near the end. "What about now?" I asked. She smiled, tired. "Now I just like quiet." Thunder rolled outside. She tucked her legs beneath her, drawing the blanket around her shoulders. I handed her another candle. Our fingers touched again. Something in that small contact lingered too long. Her eyes lifted to mine. For a heartbeat, neither of us looked away. It was nothing, really, just silence. But it was the kind of silence that asks for something. A phone buzzed on the counter, my dad's name flashing on the screen. The spell broke instantly. She got up too fast, almost knocking over the candle. "He must be checking in," she said quickly. Her tone was off, clipped, controlled. I nodded, pretending not to notice the way her voice shook. When she finished the call, she stayed by the counter, her back turned. "I should go," I said quietly. She didn't answer. I stepped closer, halfway between leaving and not leaving. My hand was halfway to hers when she said, without turning around, "You should go now." And I did. But only my body left that room. I didn't see her for a few days after that night. But she stayed in my head like static that wouldn't clear. Every time I walked through the house, every time I saw something that belonged to her, her mug by the sink, her coat on the rack, it felt like the air remembered that night even if we pretended not to. Dad came back midweek. He talked too much, laughed too loud, like always. She smiled in all the right places, but her eyes were somewhere else. Every time our eyes met, she looked away first. It should have been easy to forget, but I couldn't. A few evenings later, she asked if I could help her carry something to the attic. Boxes from the gallery she was sorting through. I said yes too quickly. The attic was warm and dust-thick, light cutting through the small window in faded stripes. We worked quietly, side by side, both pretending to focus on the task. Then she said, without looking at me, "You've been avoiding me." I stopped. "Have I?" She set the box down. "You have. And I don't blame you." There was a long silence before I found words. I didn't want to make things weird. Her laugh was short, brittle. "Things are weird." She turned then, brushing the dust off her hands. "You think I don't notice the way you look at me?" Her voice wasn't angry, just tired. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. She waited, then shook her head, half smiling, half breaking. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed to know I wasn't imagining it." The air between us changed. There was no touching, no step closer, but somehow it felt as if we'd crossed something invisible. I tried to lighten the moment. "Maybe I just look at everyone like that." She looked at me then, really looked. "No, you don't." I exhaled slowly. The walls felt too close. "Then what are we doing?" I asked quietly. Her eyes softened. "Trying not to ruin what's left of a family," she said. I nodded. "And how's that going?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Badly." A minute passed where neither of us spoke. You could hear the dust settling, the faint hum of the light downstairs, even our breathing. She leaned back against an old trunk and stared out the small window. "This isn't supposed to happen," she whispered. Something in her tone, not guilt, not shame, just sadness, made my chest tighten. I took a step forward, wanting to say I know, wanting to tell her I hadn't planned any of this either. But words failed me again. She looked at me over her shoulder, eyes glistening, but steady. She didn't say anything, just looked at me, like she was already mourning something we never even had. After the attic, things went quiet again. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that hums under your skin. She stopped calling for help with small things. Stopped waiting by the kitchen window when I came home. If she passed me in the hallway, it was with a polite smile that vanished before I could return it. Should have helped. But it only made everything worse. One afternoon, I found her in the living room, going through old photo albums. My dad had gone out for the evening. The house felt hollow, every sound too sharp. She didn't notice me at first. Her fingers were tracing a photo's edge, slow and absent-minded. It was of her and someone else, a man I didn't recognize. He wasn't my dad. Younger, maybe early 30s, standing beside her in front of what looked like an art exhibit. She looked happy in that picture, unburdened. Cleared my throat. Old memories? She glanced up, startled. Something like that. I stepped closer before I could think better of it. Who was he? Her expression shifted, not shock, not anger, just vulnerability. Someone who saw me, she said quietly, before I learned to hide. That line stayed in the air between us, fragile and honest. I sat down across from her, the album still open on her lap. What happened to him? I asked. She closed the book gently. He died. Years ago. The words hit harder than I expected. I'm sorry. She smiled faintly, looking at the closed album. Don't be. I was the one who left first. I didn't know what to say. The confession didn't feel rehearsed. It just slipped out, raw and tired. For a long moment, she just stared at her hands, thumb running over the seam of the photo sleeve. I thought I'd moved on, she said, voice trembling slightly. But then you walked in again, and it all came back. The way I used to feel before I became someone else's version of enough. I felt my pulse in my ears. And what am I in all this? Her eyes lifted to mine. A reminder, she whispered, of what I lost and what I shouldn't want back. Her honesty cut through me. I wanted to reach for her, to tell her it didn't have to mean anything wrong. But I knew it already did. Outside, thunder rolled again. Faint, like the echo of something that never really left. She stood up, crossing the room toward the window. I've spent half my life trying to be careful, she said. But I'm tired of being careful all the time. Her reflection in the glass trembled with the light. For the first time, she looked at me without fear. Not defiant, not ashamed, just there. She took a breath like she hadn't allowed herself to in years. And for the first time, she looked at me without fear. The storm passed overnight, but the house still smelled of rain when I woke. I hadn't slept much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing by that window, her face caught between sorrow and relief. That morning, the world felt muted. Even the clock in the hallway ticked softer. I found her in the kitchen, barefoot, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. The light hit her hair in pieces, soft and uneven. She didn't look surprised to see me, just tired in a familiar way. Couldn't sleep? She asked. Not really. Me neither. We both smiled, small, uncertain. It felt like the first honest exchange we'd had in days. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The air smelled like toast and wet earth. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. It was so ordinary that it almost felt safe again. I sat down, watching her move around the kitchen. Every small sound, the clink of a spoon, the sigh of the kettle, sounded amplified. She handed me a cup without asking how I took it. We drank in silence. Finally, she said, I've been trying to think of a word for what this is. What did you come up with? She hesitated. Nothing that fits. Her voice trembled at the edges, like she was afraid the moment itself might break if she named it. I leaned forward slightly. Then don't name it. That made her look up. Her eyes held mine longer than they should have. And something in that gaze, tired, warm, raw, told me that maybe she didn't want to run anymore. She set her mug down and exhaled. You'll leave again soon, she said quietly. I know. And this, she gestured between us, will fade. Maybe, I said, but not today. The words hung there. She didn't answer, but her posture softened, shoulders dropping, guard lowering. I reached across the table, slow enough to give her time to pull away. She didn't. Our hands met halfway, palms hesitant, fingers barely touching. Her thumb brushed over mine once. Light, fleeting, real. It wasn't a confession or a promise. It was something smaller, quieter. A surrender, maybe. For the first time, she didn't look like she owed the world an explanation. She just looked free. We sat like that for a while, two people pretending coffee was enough to hide everything that wasn't being said. The rain outside had stopped, but drops still slid down the window like they were taking their time to let go. When she finally stood, she didn't speak. She just reached out and smoothed a wrinkle from my sleeve, the way someone does when they care too much to admit it. Her touch lingered. She didn't say she loved me, but she let her guard down. And that was louder than any "I love you" ever could be. It's strange how time moves after something changes. Days feel slower, quieter. But inside, everything hums. Like the moment never really ended, just softened at the edges. I left for school a week later. We didn't say goodbye like people who were ending something. We just stood at the door, neither of us knowing what to do with our hands. She smiled first. That small, restrained kind of smile she always had when she was trying to hide something gentler. "Drive safe," she said. "Always." And that was it. No dramatic parting. No lingering stares. Just two people pretending not to feel what they both already knew. But on the drive back, every mile felt heavier than the last. I thought about how she used to tilt her head when she listened, how she'd pause before answering like she wanted to make sure she wouldn't say too much. I thought about that morning in the kitchen, the weight of her hand against mine. It wasn't about love. Not the kind that fits neatly into words. It was about being seen, maybe for the first time in a long time. And once you've felt that, it doesn't really leave you. Weeks passed. We didn't talk often, just the occasional message about how things were, what my dad was up to, how the house was holding up. Every text felt like a whisper of something we'd promised not to name. One night, she sent a photo, the old window, rain streaking down the glass. No caption. Just the quiet reminder that some memories don't need words to stay alive. I sat there for a while, staring at it, before finally typing, "Still raining." She replied a few minutes later. "Not anymore." That was the last time we spoke for a long while. But I never forgot her. Not the sound of her laugh. Not the way her silence could fill a room. Not the calm that came from being around someone who understood you without asking. When I think about her now, I don't think about the tension or the rules we almost broke. I think about that morning. 2 mugs of coffee, rain outside, and the unspoken truth sitting quietly between us. She didn't save me, and I didn't ruin her. We just met, in a way that most people go their whole lives without ever really meeting anyone. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks of me when it rains. But I've stopped needing the answer, because what we had wasn't about getting something. It was about understanding something, about love, about timing, about how fragile people can be when they start to feel again. I didn't just fall for an older woman. I fell into something rare, something true. And I hope, if you're listening, you find something like that too. Sparkles, if the story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?